Monday morning podcast for June, I want to say the 2nd, 2025. Just sitting outside here in Katy, enjoying the environment, looking at beautiful trees, listening to birds singing, and soaking in the sunshine. So last week was an interesting week. We had an event called May Day, or the May Day event, for about 17 entrepreneurs who are either members, prospective members, supporters of Area 81, which is my rural entrepreneur accelerator program that I've been working on with a few local established entrepreneurs here in the Grey Bruce area. And it was interesting. I've talked about it in previous podcasts in terms of what the general idea of it was. So we held it on Friday. It was from 1 to about 8. It was at one of our members' homes, and he has a lab there. So we really got to see some of the innovative things that he and his team are building in the areas of additive manufacturing, just-in-time manufacturing, product manufacturing, automation, 3D printing, sophisticated scanning technologies, and laser technologies. It's very interesting. And this is a guy who works for companies across the world. Does quite a bit of business in the U.S., not a lot in Canada. Really interesting conversation with him and with the others too. And these were entrepreneurs of varying levels of competency. We had some newbies, some established, what I call, which are people who are maybe too busy in their businesses that they can't get out and contribute to the community as much as they would like to or can. And then a couple of exits. These are entrepreneurs that have recently sold their companies. So their perspective on entrepreneurship and the role that they want to play in it is a bit different than those that are just starting out. There's a whole sort of mixture of emotions and ambitions and ideas between this range of entrepreneurs, between those just starting out, those who are established, and have payrolls and are doing things to continue to grow the business, but faced with challenges of not just scaling the business, but in my view, scaling themselves. And then exits, and those are those entrepreneurs that still want to be involved, may have their own ideas or want to help develop other people's venture ideas, that sort of thing. So I'm going to do a review of the day and post it on the MI6 blog at some point in time. Continue to develop my skills in the continuous innovation framework. It's been interesting and difficult, but if everything was easy, then everybody would do it. So building partners. So a partner to me is somebody that just doesn't look at your relationship as transactional. That's a supplier. So partners are those who are, have maybe not as much invested interest, but have an invested interest in the development of your idea, participation in your entrepreneurial life to some extent. That may grow into what I call business friendships. So what else can I talk about? So community is a thing that's starting to permeate my brain more and more, and that shouldn't be a surprise, to be honest. Like if you look at these YouTube videos, for example, the view count is really small, and I'm competing with a network of video producers, and a directory, for lack of a better word, of videos that are produced in the millions per day, maybe. So good luck in trying to, jury rig or hack the algorithm, regardless of what anybody tells you on YouTube about getting lots and lots of viewers and making money on it. For most people, YouTube is not going to be the answer to building a massive audience and making money and making meaning. Not when you think of it from a mass perspective. So my perspective on these videos is, if 5 or 6 or 10 people listen to it, and that can amount to furthering a relationship with that person towards something that's of common interest, then great. But then what's the next step? Well, the next step is, my community or our community, and Area 81 is that community. The comparison I can make with a high degree of confidence and competence is what we did with Silicon Halton, which I exited in April of 2024. We built a community of tech professionals and entrepreneurs in Halton region that grew to 1,500 members. We had about 100 and some odd meetups take place over a 10-ish year period. We had a software peer-to-peer network, which had over 200 software developers just from Halton region that were part of that network. Now, that's a pretty big peer-to-peer network, to be honest. But what that taught me was there's the power in community, and then the question is, what do you do within that community? Um, and we learned a lot in terms of what we had to do. But this was pre-COVID, right? So when COVID hit, we ended up, not being able to have our physical meetups, and all of a sudden our meetups became another Zoom session, and even worse, a Zoom session after hours, because that's when our meetups were. So Silicon Halton got mothballed. I moved. Everybody put their lives and their everything on hold for, gosh, what, a 1 to 2 year period. And what happened, I think, is we changed. In general, people changed. First of all, a habit is formed after 21 days of doing the same sort of thing. I think it's longer, to be personally honest about it. But habits are built by being either forced or choosing to do the same thing, or be exposed to the same set of circumstances over a prolonged period of time. And habits formed when it came to COVID. Habits formed in terms of reluctance to, meet in groups, and that still is the case with some people, not all people. I also think that and I don't know if this is COVID related, I think this is just general related, is because there's so much misinformation out there on the web, on social media, etc. Trust is becoming a really, really important, it's actually a barrier, to being able to make new connections and build new relationships with people. So, and trust is something that would be a new book on trust would be interesting, based on what's happened in terms of, society, based on the fact that you can be president of the United States and be a convicted criminal and get away with it because you are so rich, so powerful, that it doesn't matter. So how many people out there are starting to think about grifting, about posing, about faking? And then does that set a narrative that anything you see and watch and hear, you're never going to trust, even if it's from mainstream media? It's tough. It's tough as shit to make new connections. So for some folks that I work with, you know, one of the key things, and I believe in this strongly still, in terms of building venture or validating whether an idea is feasible or viable or not as a potential venture, whether it's a side hustle or an ongoing concern that's going to actually, build a $10-100 billion company, is the idea that, what key problems are you going to solve for your specific customer segment or segments? And these are problems that are very, very challenging, that are preventing people or companies from being successful, are putting themselves at risk, are making life so difficult, creating horrific circumstances where, where people, aren't able to survive. I mean, I'm being kind of over dramatic about it, but so if you're thinking about any idea and you want to sort of have a conversation with 5-10 prospective customers and just explore, an area in which you're thinking about building venture to try to uncover problems, good luck trying to find it. Good luck. I mean, they're easy to find. It's easy to find people. It's really tough to build rapport in today's day and age, electronically with people, because of this lack of trust and the misinformation out there. Very difficult. One example I'm going to share is we've got a member of Area 81 who's going through our venture development program, and we want to talk to farmers. And we reached out to about 20 of them, either filled out a form on their website if they had one, or sent an email if they had one. Yeah, we're going to have to call them too, is my bet. But I had a 50-50 situation. So right now we've got, I don't know, maybe 17 asks out there to these 17 different farmers. The first ask that went out was an email. Nobody responded. And that was from a guy who is an investor. It's the investor of this idea. Not only that, but he's actually a customer of farmers. Like, he buys stuff from farms, or he goes on vacations on farms. So he is a potential customer for all 17 of these farms. Now, we didn't throw that in there in the introductory email, but it was crickets, no response. So information glut, misinformation, spam folders. I mean, think of all the barriers just in order for that email to actually get into somebody's inbox, let alone for them to actually read it. Time starvation, prioritization, skepticism, no time, don't care. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So think about all those barriers just in order to have one freaking conversation with a farmer. So I followed up with a much more customized, contextualized email, making reference to some of the unique things about their farm, what I liked about it, and I got 2 responses so far. One was, Well, we read the first email. We did a search for this investor. I won't mention his name, and couldn't find anything on the internet, so we were suspicious. Then they said, we also noticed that there isn't many crumbs on the internet for you, so we weren't 100% sure whether you are legitimate. I'm not saying that's exactly what they said, but they said there were no crumbs on the internet. So what does that mean? That's Google search. Maybe it's ChatGPT, but I doubt it. So, but she liked the description I said about her business, and she said she'd love to use it for her pitch, her sales pitch. I said, please feel free to use it. No strings attached. And then I had to give her a link, a Google search link, so she could see who I was. I don't know how well these people know how to search on Google, whether they know how to do contextual searches or long-term, or sort of long keyword phrases, yada, yada, yada. And then I don't know how much time they're going to spend doing the due diligence. Um, yeah, so this is this one. So the other one came from, the other response was very positive. Oh, we like the idea, would love to get together. Can you throw out some time? So here's another friction issue. Scheduling time to talk to people. Yeah, there's Calendly, and we use a Wix website, so we have a booking tool that people can use. But it's times that I've set aside that really are convenient for me. It's not necessarily convenient for them. So now the back and forth is, well, you can check to see if any of these times work on my calendar and book it, or just throw out some dates that work for you if they don't fit within the window on my calendar that I've got on my booking tool. So then that goes back and forth, right? Lots of friction. Anyway, so that's an interesting reality of being able to, validate ideas, go in the right direction in terms of customer problem fit, which is always a good beginning point. If you find a good customer problem fit, then you're probably going to get your first 5 to 10 customers. And funding is always a lot easier for a startup if you actually get it funded by customers as opposed to grants, or angel investors. Good luck getting money from angel investors these days, especially in Canada. Yeah, so that was that. Done a couple blog posts, which I'll probably put in the description. Still very bullish on what I'm doing with Area 81. I believe that teaching people to be an entrepreneur is possible. During our May Day event on Friday, a very, very successful entrepreneur said, I don't know if everybody's born to be an entrepreneur, and I agree with that. It's like the same thing we say, I don't know if everybody's born to be an NHL hockey player. Agreed. But everybody can learn how to play hockey and see how far they can get. So in my view, everybody should be able to learn how to be an entrepreneur and see how far they get. They don't have to make it a full-time gig. They can do a side hustle, that sort of thing. But it teaches you to be entrepreneurial. And that's something that's freaking missing, in my view, is the productization of entrepreneurship, the productization of venture development, or the credentializing of being an entrepreneur. So if you want to be a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, a software developer, what do? You go to school. You learn about it. You get some degree of certification. You get some degree of testing. You do case study work. You do skills development work. It's the same with entrepreneurship. I don't give a shit what anybody tells you. It's about developing your skills. It's about mindset as well. But mindset is something that I think is, can be put into a Tony Robbins tape, or a Bob Proctor or Bill Proctor or whatever. You name some of these gurus that sell motivation, and build their businesses around the weaknesses of people. I have a problem with people that call themselves gurus and pundits and thought leaders and shit like that, or who build their businesses and all of their content around, telling people, hey, buy my system and, you'll be able to be rich. A fucking joke. The most important people to learn from are the people who are entrepreneurs that are doing something that delivers legitimate value and that's proven to customers. And ideally, doing something socially beneficial to the betterment of society and not damaging it anymore. Anyways, I could go on and on about this, but I think that's good. For those who have listened to these, thank you very much. I'll continue to work on these. And last thing I'll say, I'm doing a pivot in terms of my content. I talked about it last week too, but this is with respect to my roundup posts. So I used to do 3 roundup posts a month. One about Grey Bruce, one about marketing and entrepreneurship and business development, those sort of things. And then one about sustainable development goals, specific to the United Nations SDGs. Too much work, not enough value, not enough return, so I'm not doing them anymore. But I am going to do 1 roll-up a month, and it's going to be very, very, it's going to be articles and videos that interest me, that scratch my own itch. Not thinking too far beyond, how can I scratch everybody else's itch except mine? right? So the Grey Bruce one was all about being known as a news source for Grey Bruce because Facebook wasn't making it possible for people to get their news anymore. So it was like a public service. And I got decent traffic. We bought some paid ads on Facebook to see whether that would generate any any traffic, and it did. And the view time on the posts were pretty decent, so it was working. But nobody was converting. Nobody even wanted to sponsor the roundup. So this is a test. I'm not being critical of myself, but my decision is, what did I learn from it, and what I'm going to do next, if anything. Part of me felt guilty about not doing them anymore and letting people down. Well, fuck that. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to scratch my own itch. I'm just going to cover the things that are really important. And if anybody else wants to read them, great. I'll probably advertise them, see what type of traffic I get. But I want to see if I'm going to get people converting, right? And I'm going to use these roundups to convert them into Area 81 members or into one-to-one service clients for MI6, period. I mean, that's what I need to do for myself, because that's what we do for other clients, whether it's through Area 81, in terms of helping them become an entrepreneur and build a venture that's achieves traction. Oh, look, there's a hummingbird. I'm just looking at a hummingbird that is getting nutrients from some flowers. There he goes. And a bee. This made my month, man. Wow. Anyways, I'll leave it at that, because that's making me smile and making me feel good, and hopefully you have a good week, and we'll talk to you next week.